The smell hit us first. Not death, which every operator learns to recognize after their first deployment, but something older, like Earth that hadn't been disturbed in 1,000 years, suddenly cracked open and exposed to desert air. I'm Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, and in March 2007, I was running point for a 12-man reconnaissance element from 5th Special Forces Group, working out of Camp Stryker near Baghdad International Airport. We'd been tasked with what Command called Cultural Site Security Assessment, a fancy way of saying we were babysitting archaeologists in a war zone. The location was Kifl, a town about 90 miles south of Baghdad, home to an ancient Jewish shrine that some DoD academic thought might be getting looted by insurgents to fund operations. It was supposed to be a 48-hour mission, insert via convoy, assess the site, document any damage, and RTB before the next sandstorm rolled through. Simple, routine. The kind of mission you volunteer for because it beats running raids through Sadr City at 0:30. What made this different, what should have made us turn around the moment we arrived, was the silence. Kifl had a population of about 5,000, mostly Shia Muslims who'd coexisted with the shrine for centuries. Market town, kids playing in the streets, the usual rhythm of life that continued even with war raging around it. But when our MRAPs rolled through the outer checkpoints at a 600 hours, the place was dead quiet. One not abandoned. Smoke still rose from morning cooking fires, laundry hung on lines, a goat bleated somewhere in the distance, but not a single human being in sight. Striker 6, this is Reaper 1 actual, I spoke into my radio, keeping my M4 at low ready as I scanned the empty street. We've got a ghost town situation here. No civilians, no movement. Recommend we hold position until we get eyes-on confirmation of hostile activity. Static crackled in my earpiece. Then Captain Morrison's voice came through. Reaper 1, proceed to primary objective. ISR shows no heat signatures in your sector. Likely they're sheltering due to your presence. Rules of engagement remain in effect. I didn't like it, but orders were orders. I signaled the team forward, watching my guys fan out in a tactical column, their movements precise after months of operations together. Staff Sergeant Chen covered our 6, Specialist Rodriguez and Corporal Johnson took point, while our Combat Engineer Thompson and Medic Patterson stayed center mass with the 2 archaeologists we were escorting. Dr. Sarah Brennan, a Harvard professor who looked terrified, and her assistant, a young Iraqi translator named Karim, who looked even more terrified. The shrine was a 3-story structure of ancient brick and newer concrete repairs, topped with a green dome that caught the early morning sun. According to Dr. Brennan, it supposedly housed the tomb of the prophet Ezekiel, though the historical evidence was disputed. What wasn't disputed was that it had stood for over 1,000 years, surviving Mongol invasions, Ottoman rule, and Saddam's regime. As we approached the entrance, I saw them. Bones, not scattered randomly, but arranged in precise geometric patterns across the courtyard. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Animal bones mostly from what I could tell at distance, but also some that looked disturbingly human. Vertebrae, ribs, finger bones, all laid out in concentric circles radiating from the shrine's main entrance like some kind of mandala. What the hell? Rodriguez muttered beside me. Dr. Brennan pushed forward, her fear momentarily forgotten in academic curiosity. This isn't looting, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is ritual. Ancient Mesopotamian cultures used bone arrangements for protection rites, but nothing this extensive, and certainly not in Islamic sites. 48 hours earlier, the briefing room at Camp Stryker had been stuffy with afternoon heat and the smell of bad coffee. Captain Morrison stood at the front, a map of southern Iraq projected on the wall behind him, with Kifl marked in red. Gentlemen, Dr. Brennan, he'd begun, nodding toward the professor sitting awkwardly among a roomful of operators. We've received requests from State Department to assess potential cultural site damage in our AO. The shrine at Kifl has historical significance, and there are reports of unusual activity in the area. Unusual how, sir? Chen had asked, leaning back in his chair. Morrison clicked to the next slide. Surveillance photos showing the shrine from various angles. Local contacts report that approximately 2 weeks ago, the town's population began exhibiting strange behavior, gathering at the shrine at night, chanting in languages none of them spoke. 3 days ago, all communication from the town ceased. No cell signals, no radio, nothing. Sounds like an insurgent takeover, Johnson said. They clear out the civilians, use the religious site as a strong point. That was our first assessment, Morrison agreed. but ISR overflights show no defensive positions, no weapons emplacements, no vehicles. The town appears intact and occupied, but nobody's moving during the day. At night, he paused, clicking to a thermal image. At night, we get this. The image showed hundreds of heat signatures clustered around the shrine, but their patterns were wrong. They moved in perfect synchronization, forming shapes that shifted and reconfigured like a living geometry. No human crowd moves like that. Equipment malfunction? I'd suggested, though I already knew the answer. 3 different drones, 2 different sensor packages, same results, Morrison said. Which brings us to Dr. Brennan. She's been researching pre-Islamic sites in Iraq and has some theories about what might be happening. Doctor? Dr. Brennan stood, clearly uncomfortable being the center of attention. She was maybe 40, with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail and glasses that she kept adjusting nervously. The shrine at Kifl is built on a much older site, she began. Mesopotamian, possibly dating back to the Babylonian period. 60. There are texts, fragmentary and mostly dismissed by mainstream archaeology, that reference something called the bone collectors, entities that supposedly guarded certain sacred sites. Entities, Rodriguez repeated flatly. Ma'am, with respect, we deal in tangible threats. Insurgents, IEDs, RPGs. 64. Not ghost stories. I understand your skepticism, specialist, Dr. Brennan said. And frankly, I shared it until I started correlating historical accounts with modern reports. Every 50 to 70 years there are records of mass disappearances near these sites. Entire villages, gone overnight. The last documented incident was in 1938, during the British Mandate period. A company of soldiers sent to investigate never returned. The room had gone quiet at that. Every operator knows the feeling when a mission brief shifts from routine to potentially lethal. Captain Morrison cleared his throat. Our mission is reconnaissance and assessment only. You'll insert at dawn, conduct a site survey, document any threats or damages, and extract by sunset. We'll have a QRF on standby at Stryker, 15 minutes out if you need backup. Standard loadout, full battle rattle, and Doctor, you'll stay with Sergeant Webb at all times. Questions? Rules of engagement, sir, I'd asked. Standard ROE applies. Positive identification before firing, but if you take contact, you are cleared hot. Command wants this site preserved if possible, but your safety takes priority. After the briefing, I'd gathered my team in the equipment bay. We went through our pre-mission ritual: weapons check, comm check, medical supplies inventory. Rodriguez and Johnson, my 2 riflemen, both carried M4s with ASAGs and mounted PEQ-15 lasers. Chen, my weapons specialist, had an M249 saw and enough linked ammunition to hold off a platoon. Thompson carried his standard M4 plus demolition charges and breaching equipment. Patterson, our medic, had an M4 and a ruck full of medical supplies that could stabilize anything short of decapitation. I'd added something extra to my kit. A camera, not standard issue, but something I'd learned from previous deployments. Documentation matters, especially when you encounter something that doesn't fit the normal categories of threat assessment. We treating this like a regular recon or expecting contact? Johnson had asked, loading magazines into his chest rig. We treat every mission like we're expecting contact, I'd replied. But this one, stay sharp. Something's off about the whole situation. Village going dark, weird thermal readings, and now we're babysitting an archaeologist who thinks we're going to find ancient guardians or some shit. You believe any of that, Sergeant? Rodriguez asked. I'd thought about it, remembering things I'd seen in previous deployments that didn't make it into after-action reports. I believe that in this part of the world there's a lot we don't understand. Old places, old stories. Whether it's supernatural or just people doing crazy things because of those stories doesn't matter. It's still a threat, and we respond accordingly. Chen had laughed darkly. Hoo-ah to that, Sergeant. Ghosts, insurgents, or ghost insurgents. They all drop the same when you put rounds on target. That night, I hadn't slept well. I kept thinking about those thermal images, those synchronized movements that looked less like a crowd and more like a single organism. And I thought about Dr. Brennan's words, entities that guarded sacred sites. In my experience, things that guard places usually do so violently. The convoy rolled out at 0430 hours, 3 MRAPs loaded with my team, our archaeologist cargo, and enough firepower to level a city block if needed. The drive south from Baghdad was tense but uneventful. Highways mostly clear at that hour. only a few civilian vehicles that gave us wide berth. Dawn was breaking as we approached Kifl, painting the desert in shades of orange and pink that would have been beautiful if I wasn't so focused on the tactical situation. The town materialized from the morning haze, a cluster of flat-roofed buildings surrounding the distinctive green dome of the shrine. Reaper 1 elements, radio check, I said into my headset. One by one, my team responded. Reaper 1-2, good copy. Reaper 1-3, Lima Charlie. Reaper 1-4, solid. The responses continued until all 11 of us confirmed good communications. Striker 6, Reaper 1 actual. We're 5 mics out from objective, I reported to base. Copy Reaper 1. ISR shows no changes to heat signature situation. You are cleared to proceed. Check in every 30 mics. As we entered the town's outskirts, the silence became oppressive. Our vehicle commanders, heads out of the turrets, scanned for threats, but found only empty streets. Doors stood closed, but not barricaded. Windows had curtains drawn. A bicycle lay on its side in the middle of one street, as if someone had simply stopped riding mid-journey and walked away. This is giving me serious bad vibes, Rodriguez muttered over the team net. Stay alert, stay professional, I responded, though I shared his unease. We established a temporary vehicle checkpoint at the town's main intersection, about 200 meters from the shrine. The MRAPs formed a defensive triangle, turret gunners maintaining overlapping fields of fire. My dismount team, 6 of us plus Dr. Brennan and Kareem, would proceed on foot to the shrine, while the vehicle crews provided overwatch and maintained our escape route. Reaper 1 elements, this is actual, I said. We're going foot mobile to the objective. Vehicle elements maintain position and watch our 6. Any civilians approach, you detain, but do not engage unless fired upon. Acknowledge. The acknowledgements came back crisp and clear. I signaled my dismount team forward, and we began moving in a tactical wedge formation toward the shrine. That's when I noticed the smell, that ancient earth odor I mentioned, mixed with something else. Incense, maybe, or some kind of aromatic wood burning. And underneath it all, a faint copper tang that made my combat instincts scream danger. Doc, I said quietly to Dr. Brennan, who was staying close between Patterson and me. What kind of rituals did those texts mention, specifically? She swallowed hard, her face pale in the morning light. The accounts are fragmentary, but they reference offerings of bone and blood to appease the guardians. The bone collectors were supposedly servants of the death goddess Ereshkigal, bound to protect gateways between the world of the living and the underworld. Gateways, I repeated. As in literal gateways? The Mesopotamians believed certain geographic locations, usually associated with caves, springs, or ancient structures, served as portals to the netherworld. The shrine is built over what historical records suggest was a sacred cave system. Outstanding, Chen muttered from behind us. We're walking into a potential cult situation involving caves and death goddesses. This just keeps getting better. As we rounded the final corner and the shrine's courtyard came into full view, we all stopped. The bone arrangements I'd mentioned were even more extensive up close. Thousands of bones, meticulously arranged in patterns that hurt to look at, not because they were grotesque, but because they created optical illusions, making the courtyard seem to shift and rotate, even though nothing was moving. Jesus Christ, Rodriguez breathed. Defensive positions, I ordered, and my team immediately fanned out, taking cover behind whatever was available. A low wall, a parked car, a stone planter. Thompson, what's your read on these patterns? Any chance they're concealing IEDs? Thompson, our engineer, had spent 2 tours learning to identify every type of explosive device imaginable. He low-crawled forward, studying the bone arrangements through a handheld detector. Negative, Sergeant. No metal signatures, no chemical traces. These are just bones. But the arrangement is deliberate. Mathematical, almost. Dr. Brennan, you ever seen anything like this? I asked. She'd gone completely white, her hands shaking as she pulled out a camera and started taking photos. Only in texts, she whispered. Only in texts that I thought were mythological. These patterns, they're protective sigils. Sumerian. They're supposed to contain something, keep it from leaving the shrine. Contain what? Johnson asked. though I don't think any of us really wanted to know the answer. Before Dr. Brennan could respond, we heard it. Chanting, low and rhythmic, coming from inside the shrine. But not in Arabic, not in any language I recognized. The words seemed to crawl across my skin, making the hair on my arms stand up. Reaper 1 elements, weapons hot, I ordered quietly. Safety's off, fingers ready. Patterson, you stay with the doctor. Chen, Rodriguez, Johnson, you're with me. Thompson, cover our exit. Striker 6, Reaper 1 actual, I called into my radio. We've got audible contact inside the objective. Chanting unknown language. We're going to investigate. Stand by for further updates. Copy. Reaper 1. QRF is spinning up. Proceed with caution. He moved toward the shrine's entrance, stepping carefully between the bone patterns. Up close, I could see that some of the bones had been inscribed with symbols, carved deeply into the surface. Others had been stained dark, with something that looked like dried blood. The chanting grew louder as we reached the doorway. I signaled Rodriguez to take left side, Johnson right, while Chen covered our rear and I held center. Standard room clearing technique, adapted for a situation that was anything but standard. On my mark, I whispered. 3, 2, 1. Execute. We flowed through the doorway with practiced efficiency, weapons up, scanning for threats. The interior of the shrine was dim, lit only by candles arranged in clusters along the walls. The chanting echoed from below. There was a staircase leading down, presumably to the cave system Dr. Brennan had mentioned. But what stopped us cold was what we saw in the main chamber. The townspeople. All of them, or what looked like all of them, standing in perfect rows facing the staircase. Men, women, children, the elderly, hundreds of people, motionless as statues, eyes closed, mouths moving in synchronized chant. Striker 6, Reaper 1, I reported, keeping my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. We've located the civilian population. They appear to be in some kind of trance state. No weapons visible, no immediate threat, but this is definitely not a normal situation. Requesting instructions. The radio crackled with static for several long seconds. Then, Reaper 1, attempt to establish communication with civilians. Determine if they're being held against their will. Do not use force unless absolutely necessary. I holstered my sidearm and slowly approached the nearest person, a middle-aged man in traditional Iraqi clothing. Sir, I said in Arabic, Karim translating beside me, can you hear me? We're American soldiers. We're here to help. No response. The man's eyes remained closed, his chanting unbroken. I waved my hand in front of his face. Nothing. I gently touched his shoulder, and that's when things went sideways. The moment my hand made contact, every single person in that chamber stopped chanting simultaneously and opened their eyes. But their eyes were wrong. Completely white, no pupils, no iris, just blank white orbs that reflected the candlelight like polished marble. And then in perfect unison, they all turned to look directly at us.